Hello, hello, it's that time once again there. This is the next episode of my Fond Memory series, and this time we're going to bring you an old classic of mine that I remember from way back when. It's Heroes of Might and Magic 2. I remember this game from a long time ago. I haven't actually played the original Heroes of Might and Magic, but I remember this one distinctly well. If I remember correctly, it was made back in 1996. Back in like December or October, around that period I believe. It is made by 3DO Studios and Cyberlore, who I now believe at least one if not both the companies are now absorbed into Ubisoft, or at least given them the rights to it, since they are the current franchise that, or company that are currently making the latest iterations of the Heroes of Might and Magic series. So the series is still alive and well for the most part, but I remember this one incredibly fondly because of how diverse and original the game seemed for when I first played these type of series. I did play 3, I did play Heroes of Might and Magic 5, and even a little bit of 6 I believe is their current latest one. I tried a bunch of different variants, but I still look back at Heroes of Might and Magic 2 quite fondly. It's pretty much one of my favorites and the most diverse of different branches of races. So I'll kind of try and show you to see what I mean there. Basically, it is a little bit of a different type of strategy game where instead of like having the option to kind of make a random maps there where you build up resources, every single one of these maps are like scenarios of the sorts. Everything's pre-built with different kinds of like storyline to them there. We got like different win conditions, like if I recall this one, you have to defeat a specific hero. It shows all these icons anyway there, where the tombstone represents your defeats. Up here you have to defend an actual city, and you have to win before time runs out, I believe. So all these are very different, even some of them have like alliance base. Every single one of these maps, unlike most strategy games, is pretty much pre-generated, predetermined with different scenarios and that. So you are a little limited on maybe playing the same map over and over again unless you were to play a different faction, but you got a large variety of game modes and maps that will help with the longevity of the game for time of its period at least. For me, personally, my favorite type of gameplay here was the most tried and true and simplest there. I'm just trying to find it right now, because I know the map is here, because I have it set for my current show of the game. Where is it? Good versus Evil is the one I'm looking for. It's a basic, there it is. It's a basic 3-on-3 type of map there, where the 3 good factions go up against the 3 evil factions there, which for this kind of game we have 6 factions to show, and they're all listed right here. We got the Necromancers, which obviously are more the undead branch. It doesn't really show, it doesn't really give much of a display regarding the classes there, so I'll have to describe it the best I can. We got Barbarians, which are orcs, goblins, ogres, all those traditional type of stereotypes, pretty much all the same branch there. If it looks horish, it looks brutish, it looks like an orc, it's probably in with the barbarian factions. We got ogres, we got trolls, we got goblins and orcs, and they also got a couple cyclops there for good measure for some reason. We got the warlocks there, which is all about the mythical beast and dungeon creatures. They got the minotaurs, they got the hydras, they got griffins, they got I mentioned hydras, they have centaurs, they got all the mythical type of creatures in this sense here. And the knights, probably straightforward, they are all humanoid type of heroes or characters. They got the pikemen, they got archers, they got knights, they got horsemen. They got everything basically human in this for the knight faction. Wizards, a little bit of a mix there. It's kind of a sense of like part wizard, part magically created creatures, but also they got birds, they got hobbits, and they got boars that are kind of mixed up for some weird reason. But this Winter faction there, and they have access to giants and titans for like their higher tier, highest quality type of units. Otherwise, they're a mixed branch there. And we have the sorcerers for our last one. They're kind of like your elvish and mix of elves and a little bit of dwarves there. You got elves, kind of like your range shooters. You got dwarves as like a melee fighter. You got pixies. You got lots of woodland type creatures and hill creatures. And with at the end here, they got unicorns and phoenixes as their most powerful units. So here's our 6 factions here, very different sources. They also got other little nuances to them, like for starters, the barbarian and the knights there are more emphasized towards their physical traits there, like as their heroes, which you have access to for each of the different classes. Whereas the necromancers, warlocks, wizards, sorcerers, as their names would kind of apply, they have more emphasis on their magical powers, more like supporting through spells, stronger spells and abilities, as opposed to actually enhancing the warriors themselves. But I will get into that a little bit in a moment there. Let's load up the game and we'll show you what the in-game portion is. Ultimately, this is what the game looks like here. It's basically a standard 2D type of planes there where you have access to like multiple heroes, which is your way of exploring the map essentially there. In this case, this game has been going on for about what, almost 4 months so far. So you have, for each of these heroes, you have like specific traits in this case. So for, like I mentioned with the knights and barbarians, they have a higher emphasis on their attack defense skills and enhance their troops, which straight up makes them stronger. Whereas spell power and knowledge, you utilize that as a means to improve your spells that you have access to, making them more potent and turning the tides of battle in that sense. And in this case, this campaign has been going for a while. This is the standard good versus evil map I already showed off. So I have pretty much a large portion of it already explored, with the exception of these black areas. And of course there is no option for Fog of War, I do not believe. Otherwise, yeah, there is no Fog of War in this game mode, so any region that you explore is pretty much permanent. So you're kind of rewarded for the more aggressive scouting early on if you feel you need for that strategy there. Otherwise, this is the game here. You get access. These are your towns here, which you utilize for building your cities. In most scenarios, you start with 1, but a couple other ones, depending on the map you pick, will have you with access to 2 or more. And I do apologize for the rough transition to music there, because the audio quality isn't exactly the best for a game of this year. Like, I immediately click between terrains and it roughly switches the music quite roughly there, so I apologize for that as we go through this. Otherwise, the game itself seems pretty respectable for its age. I actually am still pretty fond of the detail in the graphics, despite the fact that it is pretty stretched out using DOSBox here, which is what I'm using to help record this game here. But when you click onto your town there, you get access to your village here, which has access to all your buildings, a couple other traits like the tavern, which gives you like little rumors and tips every week. You have access to building troops there, like the Cavaliers, of course, and you even have access to just building your structures itself when you click on the castle. In this case, you have access to 2 different heroes. Most of the time, you have access to 1 hero of your actual faction, and then 1 hero of a different faction that you can utilize. Like here, I have a warlock from Dungeon faction and the necromancer from the undead. So you have access to their traits as well if you so wish. So you get a little bit of variety there rather than being stuck to a single race. In this case, this town is pretty well fully upgraded, and I have plenty of resources to work with, as well as the gold. But I have been holding off on that just in case of a pending attack. And that's pretty much the good majority of these buildings have like multiple upgrade modes. Primarily just the actual unit production buildings here. Like these archer range has been upgraded, this blacksmith has been upgraded, Jesse Arena I just upgrade now, as well as Armory and Cathedral to get my upgrade units. But the Mage Guild here, which you use to get access to your spells, can also be upgraded multiple times throughout the game, so you can easily get access to higher and higher quality spells here. In this case, I got access only to the Cure, Magic Arrow, and the Stone Skin spells down below here. So I am pretty low tech in regards to my spell utility, essentially, and relying more on my ability to fight. But so far, I have like 3 different castle factions here to work with, actually 4, that I can utilize. Because I have been ravaging the world there pretty much single-handedly at this point. Almost to the point that my allies here, which is actually in this black shaded area, one of my allies has refused to actually capture this town here, which is what most of the towns start off as. When the game starts there, they're pretty much almost all towns, the capturable regions that you can get. So they'll have a little bit of a defense there to fight them off for the neutral towns, and when you take them, you have the option of upgrading them into a castle, which then you have access to what you just saw here. You just have a bare castle there and almost nothing at all outside of that. So you have to upgrade pretty much everything once you get the castle set. But you cannot build anything until the castle is there. So that can be a costly prospect, but the plus of getting a castle is the extra income you get every turn. You get a lot more gold for each turn you go through there, allowing you to build more troops, more units, and get more resources as a result. And of course, there are other benefits to having multiple towns, aside from the obvious income and more units to build. Like marketplaces here become more valuable for trading resources, the more towns with marketplaces. Your Thieves Guilds, where is it? Your Thieves Guild here, which keeps track of the stats. The more of these Thieves Guilds you have, the more you unlock, essentially. Like right now, I think I only have 2 Thieves Guilds, so I only can know who the best hero is for each faction, as well as their stats. And as I get more, I can understand what their personality's like, so if they're aggressive, defensive, whatever has to display for me there, as well as the best type of monsters they have access to, which at this point I'm willing to bet it's their highest tier creatures. So it'd be Cyclops for green, dragons I would imagine for red, bone dragons for blue possibly, if I were to speculate. Actually, are we able to find that out now? If I could build another Thieves Guild somewhere, then I can probably do that actually. Since I have the resources for it, let me just splurge a bit. Okay, so yeah, Builder, Explorer, Warrior. So yeah, there's their personality traits right there. Warrior means they're eager to fight. Builder, of course, Explorer for orange and Builder. So that explains why my teammates aren't doing much, because neither of them are actually warriors. So that's a little unfortunate, because I have to deal with 2 warriors essentially. And there, we have access to all the unit traits. So purple has a Cyclops, green has Cyclops, the Lich is for blue, so they don't actually... Red and blue don't actually have their highest tier units, interestingly, and orange has mages. And of course it gives us all these other stats as well as a result, like artifacts, which are basically trinkets to enhance your units, total army strength, which is obviously me, so I could probably just go win the game, and with 1 more Thieves Guild I could probably figure out who has the best income, gold income. But you could kind of deduce that with the treasure here almost, which is a little bit higher here. So that may not be as significant for me, at least personally. And like I said, we get spells. Like each of these different factions have their own little unique traits. Like the wizards here get access to an extra spell for each of their tiers, essentially. So in this case, anyone who visits this town basically learns all these spells here, up to a certain point. Next we'll get on to the hero levels and traits. I already shot off this hero to a brief second there, but down below here's all the artifacts and trinkets that you can get access to, as well as the skills directly above him here. You can see this character is really kitted out. He's basically the one I start off with, and he's my best geared. He may not have the strongest of an army so far, because he has my Crusaders, which are the Knights' top tier units, and we have a good high number of the unupgrade cavalry, essentially. So they have not been upgraded, which is why they stand out from the rest of these guys. Because the Knights generally all carries the same kind of theme. If they're not upgraded, they're all generally red, and when they're upgraded, they have sorts of blue on them, like this Crusader has a blue cloak. But this is the only one kind of faction that has the similarities. All the undead and other factions kind of have their own differences because they're so dramatically different than races. But these are basically artifacts. They all increase their stats by different means, like this enchanted hourglass increases duration spells. This makes my troops immune to death spells, which is going to be handy against undead. We got boots, we got ammo cart, endless supply of ammo, and we got our supplies. But the main thing I want to talk about is these leadership traits. For as your character levels up, which you do level up through experience. My character right now is level 14, and every time he levels up, except for the very beginning when you first recruit him, where he gets access to 2 basic traits, you have a choice between 2 skills you can upgrade. Hopefully I'll have a chance to show it off for you if I can get someone leveled up. And you choose one of these traits and you either upgrade up to 3 different tiers of skill, which is basic, advanced, like this logistics here, and expert, which is the highest quality skill you can get. And as you level them up, you'll continually be presented with different options. So it's all randomized a lot of the time, so it's up to you to try and get the best type of skills for the hero that you want, because it will be pretty difficult to get the best skill or the best traits you want a lot of times, especially as you start upgrading these skills you already have to expert, because you will no longer get further options to kind of grab them, upgrade them further. So you could be forced with diplomacy, which I kind of took here, which allows you to recruit like monsters on the map that are weaker than you for a price there, rather than just straight up fight them, which in turn can make you stronger. Or you can get mysticism, which allows you to regenerate your mana more rapidly every turn if you're not in a town, as well as all these other traits, and there are other skills as well. So there's like, I believe 14 different traits you can choose from, which will give you a lot of different versatility. Like I took Pathfinder here for this one character, which removes half the penalty for moving off of the road or rough terrain, basically. So she is pretty good at moving around and exploring in a sense. So as you roam around, you get access to all these different events, which can be pretty tricky to notice. You have to watch for the change in your horse, basically, which is your move icon. Or in the case of attacking enemy, a sword. And like garrisoning a town, sometimes there's like this icon here, but actually that's to select your town in this case, or to reinforce. So you have to be, yeah, it can be a little bit difficult to notice that as you're mousing over, in a sense, but the map is pretty much littered with all these different like sites that you can keep going to, as well as, since everything's pretty much clear out, there's like countless monsters of various types that litter all across the map here, and you basically utilize those to help level up your character, get some extra gold, experience, loot, as well as grabbing ore mines that are generally protected by these monsters and creatures. And almost every single one of these monsters are basically creatures that you have access to through one of the races. There are a few extra ones that you can't actually build through your factions, like the rogues, which you can actually get actual rogue troops from these wagon camps here, which is a specific building you can build them. Or like nomads, which are like a horse type creature, as well as a couple elementals, and I think a few other units in that you don't actually have access to normally through the factions or these towns that you have captured. So you basically just roam around there, doing your best to get as much resources as you can, as well as upgrading your characters. Like this Witch Doctor hut here, it says I have not visited, but what this does, as well as many other buildings like it there, it permanently boosts your stat. So there's lots of resources around to gather for different little means. Like this fountain here will restore your mana instantly, which is why it also says not visited, so because I could regain my mana there. We have the fort, which is just like the Witch Doctor, you increase your defense rating. You have these windmills, which you can go to every week to get free resources from them. Standing stones for your source magic. And there's a mercenary camp somewhere, I believe, that allows you to increase your attack, although I don't know where that is at. Unfortunately, to kind of show that. As well as these shrines here. There's different shrines that allow you to get access to different spells, like third circle here for third level spell, second shrine spell, or second level shrine, which I just showed earlier, to get access to second level spells. Oh, there, it's magic well, that's what I'm looking at. That's where you get your mana, not the fountain. That increases your luck, I believe. But the goal ultimately is generally based on your map that you have selected. Or, the most tried true way is to destroy your opponent, by whichever means necessary. In this case here, I'm gonna have to try and see if there's like a fountain or something for me. Probably not, so I'm gonna go straight to the battle with like half my character's mana and show you what the battle gameplay is like. But basically, much like your turn-based scenario, this game, the in-game battle is generally all about your turn phase. Although, it can be really difficult to understand your movement at first there, because if you by default, I think every one of these is off. So if you turn this off, you have no way to really know where your movement is. So that's something you need to be very concerned about. So to fix it off, just to show you right now, is you turn on all these grids here through the menu tab. So you basically turn on, that will solve your problem right there. You get this little shade area to show your movement, so that solves any issues you may have with that regard. So that is my big concern there as far as the combat. Otherwise, every turn cycle you have access to a spell, which I just cast my blind on these trolls here, essentially knocking them out for a couple of turns. In this case, it will blind them for 8 turns, so they are effectively out of this fight until I see fit to attack them. So I'm perfectly fine with that, and I just got a morale boost. So morale is, let's see, it doesn't really show on my characters, but it shows on these stat pages. If you really keen eye and saw those yellow golden birds on my like hero stat page in the top right, morale is basically a stat that you can either increase or negatively impact, which affects your chance on getting like a devil movement or double action. Essentially giving you a free action every turn there. You have a chance to do it. With like three different tiers to that as well. You have like a low chance, medium chance, and a high chance to gain morale. In this case, I'm going to utilize it to attack these orc archers here. Don't ask me why orcs are using crossbows instead of axes, I could not tell you. But otherwise, this is generally how the combat works out. Almost every unit has like a basic attack there, melee attack, that they can utilize for it, but every unit they attack also has a chance to retaliate after you hit them. So it's up to you to try to maximize your damage there and minimize the amount of damage you also take with your characters. Like in this case, it's hard to show, but I lost 2 cavalry due to these goblins up here. And also to show the barbarian, yeah, he's a low tier barbarian with pretty much low attack stats, but these goblins still did a lot of damage to me. So what do I want to do? I got a lot of spells access to, and I did lose a fair amount of health. So actually I do not need to engage this ogre here, so instead what I'm going to do, I'm going to bless my crusaders here, because these are my highest tier units, and they do a ton of damage. I'm going to use them to attack the ogres, and witness the magic that is the crusaders' double attack. Although, even though it did get a double attack, the ogres did get a chance to retaliate, so like I said, since he hit him so hard though, they did like almost no damage at all. So it is worth hitting with your highest tier units in this regard. Otherwise, except for these trolls, which I gotta figure out, this game is all but over right now. This is a nice clean victory. So I'm gonna let my Crusaders get the first hit in. This is a general strategy that at least I go for, so considering the fact that these are like their strongest units and I'm gonna need to wipe them out heavily. So 10 war golems just died, and I don't think I lost a single Crusader did I out of that. So that was beautiful. And now that I can exploit the fact that they use their one retaliation, which is kind of what is going on here. I let my Crusaders attack first to soak the damage and maximize the damage, and then I just clean them up. So that was a pretty clean victory. I am not just trying to show off there, that is generally how, at least in my sense, how the game runs as far as strategy and such. So that's the gameplay in a nutshell there as far as the combat. There's a lot of variations, and as you capture more towns, you could get higher and higher tier units that you can actually mix and match. Like as you can see right here, I have access to the lovely phoenixes here, which are flying creatures with a nice breath attack, which actually allows them to hit multiple creatures that are stacking right next to each other, which is potentially ridiculously powerful. As well as the dragons as well also has that little trait, but the one thing I love most about Heroes of Might and Magic 2 over all the other Heroes of Might and Magic games is the differences in the characters, or the units in general. Like, this Phoenix here has like 100 health, it does 20 to 40 damage. But, if I were to look at my Crusaders, it has like almost half the health. Mind you, this is another thing to keep in mind. My Crusaders can be upgraded, the Phoenixes cannot. Otherwise, these Crusaders, which they actually would be Paladins before their upgrade, would actually have 50 health and they would do less damage, as well as less speed. So, arguably, my Crusaders and Paladins are inferior to what the Phoenixes are, especially since the Phoenixes have their breath attack. But the Crusaders have that unique trait of being able to do their double attack, so they can potentially do a lot of ridiculous damage. So let's see, they have 10, let me just compare to other stats, 10 to 20 damage, 11 attack, and I think the Phoenixes is about the same, a little more higher attack and higher damage, so essentially double the damage potentially. So the Phoenix are arguably a lot better, and to be fair, it kind of shows because the cost of the Phoenixes is also more expensive as a result. But the trade-off there is the Crusaders in this case, again remember to upgrade, the Paladins would be cheaper when you first get them. They cost only gold, and they're also cheaper. And also, another subtle fact is I actually can get more of these Crusaders than do Phoenixes. Every week you get more units there. In this case, I would get 4 Crusaders every week, whereas opposed to the Phoenixes, I can only get 3 of them a week. So that's also something you need to consider as well. And it continues to be true there, like, I don't have access to it yet, but these cloud castles give you access to the giants, which are arguably one of the most powerful units in the entire game there, because when you do upgrade the Titans, they have access to a range attack, so they can just harass people with their most powerful weapons and attacks without even getting to melee range, essentially. And if you ever get to like the dungeons here, their dragons are unique because you actually can upgrade them 3 different times there. You get the green tower now for the green dragons, which are not exactly impressive on their own. But then you can upgrade to the red tower for red dragons, and then black tower for the black dragons, which are straight up the most powerful units in the game, I believe. Because they have the breath attack, they have the most health in the game, up to 300 health, I believe. As well as the ridiculous damage potential and the ability to fly to pretty much go everywhere they want in the entire combat map. So they are very dangerous in that regard for multiple different reasons. But this is basically Heroes of Might and Magic in a nutshell here. It's definitely been a fun game. I remember this tremendously fondly, and as you already seen there, I've been playing this one map here for almost 4 months, so I have been enjoying the process going through it. And the one other thing, which is kind of, if you played any other Heroes of Might and Magic games, you'll remember this little concept, is these obelisks here. These obelisks allow you, depending on the scenario, you could probably have none of them at all, but the good old puzzle map here, the more obelisks you manage to encounter and unlock, it reveals this kind of puzzle, which uncovers a little bit more. And the reason for all this is there's a hidden artifact of some kind of tremendous power that you can unlock. For like games like Heroes of Might and Magic 5 and up, I believe. I don't know if Heroes of Might and Magic 4 has it as well, but I think it's called the Tear of Ashi, which is a very specific item that you can allow to get like a tremendous upgrade to your town that has it, or the faction that unlocks the tier essentially. But for here, you get like a random ultimate artifact that is pretty much randomly generated for every game. It's pretty generic, I believe. Like you can get like a ridiculous amount of knowledge, a ridiculous amount of attack, a ridiculous amount of defense, or spell power. It's probably one of those, or it's probably just a hybrid of all four, essentially. So it's pretty restricted, not very unique and potent on its own, but it is very powerful in every regard. Otherwise, if you can unlock it, and that's what these dig modes are for. So I have no idea if the bots actually managed to uncover it, or if it's still in this area. I would have to probably uncover more before I can find out, to be fair. But that is Heroes of Might and Magic 2 for my Fond Memory series. I am loving this game, and it actually seems like it held up pretty well. Still a little bit of pixelation there because again, this was made for a different time. But if you could up-res this would actually still look relatively sharp with really good updates to texturing and that. It still seems pretty good. The audio though is pretty harsh, unfortunately, so I have to apologize for that. Like clicking on these different regions, just you can even listen to, you can hear it there, how when I click on it, it just harshly changes the music level. So that would be the main criticism I really have for this game, is how harsh that music and audio level can be. But otherwise, I am really happy with this game, and I'm definitely going to finish up this campaign here before I continue on to my next Fond Memory series. So thank you to everyone who's been watching.